I'm going to ask the first question. Number one, when you think of debate, what do you think about? So basically, a debate is when you try to convince people of your side of the argument, right? Your side of the debate topic, your side of the issue. And let's say you want to say we should stop using plastics. Okay, you're going to try to convince me of your side of this argument, saying we should try to stop using plastics and how we can, and what ways plastic is polluting the earth and our oceans. And then what is our opponent going to do? So if we're saying we should stop using plastics, what is our opponent going to say? So if I'm saying we should stop using plastics, what is our opponent? What is the case that our opponent will try to make? Yeah, we should use plastics. So you guys get the idea. This is an argument, right? Now, I have another question. What do we use in order to convince? What do we use in a persuasive argument? So we use evidence. What is evidence? Proof. Exactly. Proof. We have got to use proof when we are making an argument. Otherwise, it's just an opinion. Anybody can give their opinion. People are entitled to their opinions. But if we want to convince others of our opinion, we have got to use proof. We have got to quote experts. Now, when we are trying to argue something and we're trying to quote an expert, what is an expert? Basically, an expert is a PhD. What is a PhD recipient? So basically, when you have a PhD, you are a doctor of philosophy. Okay, so that is the highest degree you can get in college. It's a PhD. All right. PhD is basically a doctor of philosophy, not medical doctor, but you're an expert in your field. If it's biology, you're a biologist. If it's physics, you're a physicist. Okay. Basically, if you receive a PhD, you are an expert. Therefore, your opinion is credible. Now, what else? Who else makes up an expert? Okay, so an expert can be a PhD, a head of a lab, okay, head of a department in college, all right, astrophysicist or a theoretical physicist. Anyone heard of that? Theoretical physicist. Okay, so basically, that is an expert, someone who is credible. Now, how do we quote an expert? Here, I'll give you an example. When we quote an expert, we have to basically say their words, but we have to give credit to them. So you can say, according to John Taylor, zoos are bad. Or according to Richard Dawkins, zoos are good. Here, let me show you. Yeah, here we go. So I'm published, okay? And I have some persuasive articles that I published. This one is an academic journal that I'm published in. Let's go to December 2021, go to number 28, and that is my article right here. So this is me, all right, Sam Mansuro. I'm gonna pull up my article. Now notice how many references I have. These are all experts. See the references? How many references do you think I have? Look, it starts right here, goes here, and then here, here, here. Look at all this. Like a lot of experts just for one article, right? Here, look. This is all the article is, only a couple pages. See, I have the abstract right here. This is the academic journal. And in order to be published in an academic journal, number one, you have to get past the editorial board. The editorial board consists of editors who all have their PhD. You're not fooling anyone on an editorial board. You have to have basically peer review. If they review your work, and they say it's good enough, then you can be published in an academic journal like this one. Okay, so but you have to have references, and they have to be properly referenced. So let's see how we quote an expert. We are going to quote an expert this way. According to anthropologist Richard Leakey, you can tear flesh by hand, you can't tear hide by hand, or you can't tear flesh by hand. Our anterior teeth are not suited for tearing flesh or hide. Okay, so right here, here's an example. According to psychologist Henry Taylor, video games are bad, or whatever. Here's another way to basically quote someone. Professor Richard Smith wrote, Zoos are bad for animals. So basically, this is what gives our presentation credibility. We basically quote experts. So now I will show you an example. Woohoo, yeah. This is a debate, and it's in the finals of a debate. So these two, okay, so these two high school students basically made it to the finals, and it took place in Illinois, and they are competing for the finals championship. She won, by the way. She did very well. All right, so let me give you an example. So if we have a debate, the government goes first. This is the government. The government is someone who has to basically prove his point. The burden of proof is on him. So if he's saying zoos are okay, they should not be banned. Zoos should not be closed. He has the burden of proof to prove why, to show us why they should stay open. So let's hear a little bit from the government. He is talking about violent revolution being necessary.
If you're not ready to die for it, put the word freedom out of your vocabulary. Because I agree with Malcolm X that freedom requires a fight, and because this fight realistically requires violence, I affirm, resolved, violent revolution is a just response to political oppression.
Yeah, Malcolm X. Talk about a debater, talk about a public speaker. You know what Malcolm X said when they asked, what court did you go to change your name to X? He said, I didn't need to go to court to be called Smith or Johnson or Taylor. So this person is basically giving us reasons why we should believe him, not just basically saying words in a monotone fashion. So if I say something like this, I am going to school, then I am going to go home, right? That's all monotone, exactly, one level voice. However, if I have voice modulation, if I change up my voice, I will sound like this. Today, I'm going to the store. Then after that, I'm going to school, right? So there's different tones in my voice. Remember the tone that you had when you were talking to your parents to buy you that sugary cereal that they didn't want to buy. And they're right, because they know it's all garbage. But remember how bad you wanted it. What type of tone did you use when you were asking for that cereal? Did you say, can I please have this? I would like this, like you're, completing a school project. Or did you say, oh, please, I'll do anything, oh, please, blah, 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 blah. Right? You're having a persuasive tone because it means something to you. You were trying to persuade them. You're trying to convince them. All right, let us continue. Okay, so let's go to the Q&A. So the Q&A portion does what? What do asking questions of your opponent, okay, what does that do? Why do we want to ask questions to our opponent? We ask questions to poke holes in their argument. We ask questions to find weaknesses in their argument. Here, I'll show you. Let's go to Q&A portion. Okay, so he finished his opening statement, right? Now it's time for her to ask him some questions and find some weaknesses in his argument. Okay, so he's saying that violence is just when it comes to, political oppression, when it comes to equality. If you want to be equal, you got to be violent. So she's saying, okay, well, are any means of violence necessary?
Are any means of violence just as a response to political oppression?
Right, so I think violence is a just option for a few reasons. First of all, because the oppressed are guaranteed this innate right to...
First of all, why didn't he answer her question? That's not the question she asked. He's purposely trying to squirm out of this. But don't worry about it, because she's going to catch him with her very next statement. So she asked, is any type of violence necessary? And he said, I think violence is necessary. That's not answering her question. See, there's a reason why she asks him questions, and it's to poke holes in his argument. Let's continue.
Self-defense, which allows them to push back against their oppressor.
I'm asking you more specifically, what type of violence is allowed?
Notice how she didn't let him off the hook. She did not let him get away with saying, yeah, violence is necessary. No, what type of violence? Is any type of violence necessary? That's where she puts him in a corner. So he has to answer her question.
Right. So
it's pretty good, actually.
I think there are lots of types of violence that are allowed, but I think the most effective means would probably be guerrilla warfare, because guerrilla warfare allows you to overcome the power disparity between a...
Okay, all right, so you guys get the idea. Now it's going to be her turn. This is called the opposition. She's going to give her opening statement, which she wrote, she researched. She gives evidence. She properly referenced these evidence examples, and now we will see her give that speech right now. Okay, so she's gonna thank every person under the sun. She just got here in the finals, so that's what you have to do when you make the finals.
Member of a school district that really values this activity.
Okay.
That is Missouri debate.
Yep.
It has very competitive nature, but do things right in. I negate the resolution.
Okay, here we go.
Thank you to help me prepare for this tournament. Thank you to my dad for teaching me the value and importance of hard work. Thank you to my mom.
All right, here we go.
Everyone good? Okay. We don't value a right if it erodes the rights of all others. I negate the resolution resolved. Violent revolution is a just response to political oppression. Value justice, defined by Cambridge as the condition of being morally correct or fair.
Okay, so notice how what she just said. She quotes an expert, Cambridge University in England, one of the oldest universities in the world. Okay, so she quotes an expert. You have to quote an expert, otherwise it's just your opinion. You can't just, take people's opinion, word for it. You can't just be like, trust me, bro, this is what's going on. No, you're gonna have to quote an expert. All right, so let's go to his question now. So she went, now it's time for him to question her.
Let's begin. So let's start on your contention one about how violent revolution allows illegitimate leaders in, right?
Yes.
So you talk about how violent means lead to violent ends, right?
Correct.
And then you bring up this Perkoski 18 study, right?
No, I read to you.
Okay, Perkoski 18. Basically, Perkoski is the name. They misspelled it in the CC, but the year is 2018. So when you want to quote an expert, you can also say Dawkins 2018 says. You don't have to read the whole quote. You can just say Dawkins 2018 or whatever. Professor Richard Taylor 2019 says, right? Okay.
A study from Kim.
I'm talking about the study that says that there's 3 times more likely to be mass killings.
That's from Carnes and Chenoweth.
That's Carnes and Chenoweth.
Yes.
Okay. Where did the sample size from that study come from?
It came from a large amount of.
And you're going to have to know the answer to this. When they ask you, okay, no problem. You just mentioned the study, right? How did they come about that conclusion? What was the study? What were the variables? Oh, man. And you better know the answer. Otherwise, they are definitely going to win that part.
Collections of both violent and non-violent revolutions.
Okay. What was in the sample? How'd they determine what was included?
You can ask that too. If all else fails, you can ask your opponent, okay, well, what were your references? Who did you quote? That's when they'll have to say who they quoted. And it better be from a credible source. Now, where can we find credible sources? The internet. So how do we find expert opinion on the internet? Do we just look it up? Do we just Google something? Are all websites on the internet credible? No, they are not credible, right? So what websites do we look for when we research? By the way, this is what you're going to have to do in college. This is pretty much, aside from math and aside from lab classes and aside from public, like public speaking like this is what you're going to have to do in college. College is basically researching and then writing an essay on what you just read. That's college. If you know how to write an essay based on what you read, you can get a degree aside from math and lab classes. So .edu, .gov, and .org. Those are the 3 websites that have credible expert opinions. Now, if you look at a .com is not, that's not credible. I mean, even this here, look, see, even this website that I'm published in, this is a .org. Has to be a .org. You got to get your expert opinions from .org, .edu, .gov. All right, so we have the websites that we search, basically edu, gov, org. Edu stands for education. Now, why don't we use .com? See, notice I say here, right here, don't use .com. Anyone can create a .com. I can create a .com. But if you have an expert opinion in those news agencies and news outlets, then you can quote the expert, not the news agency. You want to use a .org, .gov, or .edu. And that is basically it. Now, when it comes to debates, you're going to have to write an opening statement. Okay, now this opening statement basically is very simple. It goes like this. Give your opinion. I think we should, I don't know, whatever it is. I think we should stop polluting for these 3 reasons. Then in the body, you give, those reasons why. First reason, you give evidence. Second reason, and you give evidence for that. It's very simple. I'll show you how to complete all that, how to give a conclusion, all that stuff. I also have examples of an opening statement. I also have fallacies, what not to say. Okay, what not to say. So argument by dismissal. What does that mean? Argument by dismissal. What am I basically saying right here? All right, so basically that's saying, nah, that's not correct. Okay, well, why isn't it correct? You have to tell me why. You haven't given me any reason. Okay, slippery slope, stating that tolerating something that our opponent suggests will lead to a whole series of disastrous events. That's a slippery slope. We cannot say that. So this is basically debate. And at the end, we have a closing statement, which is where you can say, as you can see, I'm right because, right? Or as you can see, my opponent is wrong. Okay. So the closing statement, not many people want to write closing statements, but you have to, because you have to explain why you're right. And you have to explain also not only why you're right, but you have to explain why your opponent is wrong. You have to take the closing statement as a last second attempt at poking holes in your opponent's argument. So you can say, here, I'll give you an example. You can say, my opponent says, zoos should be banned. However, certain scientists say that zoos save animals, or whatever it is, okay? That's what you want to say in your closing statement. My opponent says. So here, let me show you something. They're going to give you different variations of my opponent says.
Then let's begin. The key difference between an affirmative ballot and a negative ballot is that a negative ballot is a vote for no change in the status quo. It's a vote for the oppressed to continue becoming oppressed. The affirmative.
See that? See how he's demonizing the opponent's argument? If you vote for them, you're just going to keep being oppressed, and there's not going to be any change. How are we going to solve the problem? You see what I mean? You see how he is poking holes, and you see how he is making their side of the argument look weak as opposed to his side.
Vote is a vote for change. With that, let's move on to my opponent's framework. Let's start on the criterion of maximizing human rights.
Okay, he's going to say, what's wrong with that?
2 problems. First, you can't have a society that maximizes human rights if it structurally oppresses a group of people.
Okay, so notice how he's making her argument look bad. That's what I would like for you to do in the closing statement. All right, now let's go to her closing statement. This is what she's going to say. She's going to say, my opponent says. Yeah.
Is everyone ready? We will be going negative.
Oh, she's going to change her tone of voice, by the way. She's going to appear that she's screaming and stuff like that and getting angry. She's not. This is just for presentation.
And then affirmative. You would never prefer a world where we violate all rights of others when we say we're doing it for something good.
Okay, so notice how she says that. You would never, prefer a world where we have to violate everybody's rights, Okay, so what she's doing is she's demonizing the other side. She's making the opponent's argument look weak.
The opponent has the burden to prove to you that not only are we having violence. Is everyone ready? We will be going negative and then affirmative. You would never prefer a world where we violate all rights of others when we say we're doing it for something good.
Okay, so if he did not say all rights, then basically that's what he means, because you have to violate rights. That's what you have to do in a revolution or in a wartime. I mean, you just do. It is what it is. You can't do whatever you want in the wartime. So that's what she means. Okay.
My opponent has the burden to prove to you that not only are we,
like, for instance, we can't sell stuff to, like, if we're at war, let's say we're at war with a country, we can't sell Coca-Cola to that country. Like, we can't do business with that country. Okay, we can't just do whatever we want in times of war. Okay.
having violent revolution.
No, we don't just have that right.
with the intention of overcoming oppression, but that we will legitimately overcome oppression when we throw these nations into chaos. On my value of justice and value criterion of maximizing human rights, my opponent says we only maximize human rights if we don't have structural oppression.
Okay, so notice how she said, my opponent says. Here, show it to you again. My opponent
Legitimately overcome oppression when we throw these nations into chaos. On my value of justice and value criterion of maximizing human rights, my opponent says we only maximize human rights if we don't have.
See that? My opponent says that's how you have to make their side look bad. My opponent says that zoos are okay for animals. However, scientists say that they should be closed, right? So basically, last minute attempt to poke holes in their argument and make our argument look better. Okay, so that is going to conclude the webinar that we have for debate. If so, with that, I would like to say thank you again.